it's about being together. When you said shading into leisure, you can tell that something completely banal and in itself completely diverting can shade into leisure when it becomes an affirmation and an opportunity for people to experience the goodness of life together.
Hi, I'm John Cuddeback.
And I'm Sofia Cuddeback.
If you're wondering whether you can really be friends with your spouse
And raise children into responsible adults with whom you have a relationship.
and do what it takes to make a homestead, reconnecting with your body and the land wherever you live,
If you just want to think more about how to make a truly happy home in our trying times,
then the Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast, is for you. Join us. Great to be with everybody. Always enjoy these conversations with my wife. At least it's one point in our busy life we get to talk about things we really enjoy. Leisure, the 5 action steps. So the idea here is our last podcast was more on principles of leisure. We're going through the book, The Intentional Household, Living as If People Matter. When I say going through it, we're not going through it, but we're trying to do some podcasts that emphasize different and draw out different aspects of the book. One of the key principles is to enact true leisure as the center of life in the home. And so last week we talked generally about leisure, kind of what it is, why it's so important in the big picture, why we want to prioritize it at home. And today is just just getting right down to the details, the 5 action steps that we have in that chapter.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really excited about it. Part of the reason that I suggested that we or asked you if we could talk about leisure the last time we made a podcast is I actually find it kind of a difficult concept to try to really understand because there's so many different ways of thinking about leisure in our culture, most of which actually don't really seem to be what you're talking about when you talk about leisure. And in our conversation last time, it was very exciting to kind of have it unfolded. What is leisure? Why is it so important? And how it impacts us as being human. So I'm very excited to be talking about what was a little bit more theoretical and principle oriented, our last podcast. And so I'm really excited to talk about how that plays itself out in a practical way in the home. I would love it if you don't mind when we start here, would you mind just kind of doing a quick kind of encapsulation about what we talked about last week when you gave us a definition of leisure and kind of helped us understand a little bit, why is it so important? Because I find that even after having discussed it, there's always this kind of point in me where I just think there's kind of an ounce, at least an ounce of reticence in kind of making leisure an object of what I'm pursuing, because I kind of feel like it's a little bit lazy. Like, what? Are you fleeing from work? And so anyway, I was so enriched last week and really convicted of, wow, this is something to be pursued. So can you please refresh our memory and go over and just kind of express in a kernel what leisure is, and then let's start talking about how we do it practically.
Okay. All right. Good. I think it's a great idea. And I know you're with me on this, but our focus really is going to be, let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
We're going to go through what we call the 5 action steps there, of which there's still many different examples of these 5 different things. And each of us will give what is maybe our favorite that we think has worked the best. But I do completely agree, particularly where there's such a key word that has been so consistently misused, misunderstood, misused, mispracticed, that we and it's just one of the deepest points about human life, period. And thus, not surprisingly, one that is fundamentally missed by the society in which we live. It's just really hard to get straight in our minds while we're after it, which is key. Our whole approach to the intentional household is to be truly intentional. We have to have as clear a vision as we can. It's not going to be perfect, but we keep trying to be able to think more clearly so that we can love better, think more clearly so we can act with conviction, even if we make mistakes and have to adjust. We're trying to understand those principles. So hear the word leisure. What are we hearing? What are we thinking?
So let me just throw in, in my experience, it's not enough to understand it. I actually have to be reminded periodically. I think because of the force of all these other ways in which leisure is talked about in our culture and practiced in our culture, I just find that every time we go back to it explicitly, to the principles, and go, wait, what is this? Why is it so important? It's like I'm re-enriched, reinvigorated, and really have this experience of, wow, I needed to be reminded of that. So it's kind of, in my experience, not enough to kind of grasp the concept, understand it, let's go. It's actually super helpful to be refreshed, kind of refreshed or re-reminded of what it is, because we seem to easily, it slips through our fingers.
Yeah, so true. So I'm just really trying to briefly, quickly do this, try to go for the heart of it. The way we're using the term leisure, and of course, again, we have to understand it's going to be used in other ways. As we clarify these concepts, we have to be ready in our common usage, common parlance. We might still have to use the word interacting with other people the way that other people use it.
Mhm.
Realizing that richness, but leisure is what life is about. We need to start there, because I want to be that stark, because to Aristotle, this was completely obvious when he says this, that leisure is what life is about. Leisure is what we're after. Leisure is what we're forming ourselves to be able to do. And it is key to understanding our age, to understand that we have lost what life is most about. And thus we have invested ourselves in other things, and particularly work, this kind of isolated, diminished sense of work, because we don't have this deeper understanding of what we were really made to do. As Joseph Pieper says, we're made to see, we're made to live together in vision. We're made to live together in resting in the truth. Let's just go super big. St. Thomas says, from all eternity, what has God been doing? He has been rejoicing in his own being. And that rejoicing is he's seeing and loving. He's resting in it. We need to let that sink in for a moment.
Mm.
God's creating us. This is at the heart of Christianity. This fits with what Aristotle would hold, even though he wouldn't have seen this the way that we do by divine revelation. God has created us to share in his life. His life is rejoicing in his being. He made us, like him, to rejoice in his being. Heaven, which is unlimited, full life, is the beatific vision. It's looking upon God, it's looking with love and resting in that vision, and being united with him in that, seeing him as he is and being seen most fully as we are, and doing that together with others. This has to have dramatic implications for life on this earth. In God's great plan, there's other things that we must do to become formed to be able to do that.
So,
Please.
so a soundbite, if that would be, correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see if I kind of grabbed the kernel. That leisure is a seeing and resting in together in the good.
That's a very reasonable, very good way of
Okay.
saying that. And let's go etymological, by the way, real fast. Again, it's all about the five practical steps, but we haven't noted this before. If you go to Latin, the word for leisure is otium, O-T-I-U-M. Negotium, N-E-G at the beginning, is from where we get the word in English, like negotiation. Negotium in Latin basically means business. Note how business is named for what's not leisure. Neg otium, not leisure. So there's otium, there's, there's what's not that. And now that's a bit stark, but the two great sides of the coin of human life are work and leisure. And how they relate is, we don't want to spend too much more time on this, because we're going to jump in and we can go back and look at our other discussion there. And we'll keep discussing these things. I need to say this: work is for the sake of leisure. Great quotation from Aristotle. We work in order that we might have leisure. In a recent post that I did at LifeCraft, I got a slightly testy comment, which is understandable. It was saying, you are undervaluing work. You're making it sound as though work has no value in itself. Work is such a beautiful, key expression of human life. Work isn't just for the sake of something else. It's a very tricky point. But I try this. Let's focus. Work has great significance and meaning in it, but its meaning ultimately comes from something outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
It has meaning in it, but it comes from something outside of it. It comes from activities that have their meaning fully and truly from within. That's one of the ways that you can define broadly leisure. Those activities that have their meaning from within, they are for their own sake. They are the activities that ultimately we were made to do. Again, Christians have a great opportunity to see this in realizing that in the next life, what we call work, in all of its beauty and wonder and joy, passes away. Work was part of, it is shot through with meaning, but ultimately the meaning, the richness of work. And this is what's so key to having not the diminished form of work, the richer form of work. As I understand, this commenter wants to have the richer form of work because we have
Hmm.
such a diminished sense today. Understanding leisure and seeing work in relation to leisure, we must see does not diminish work.
Hmm.
It brings out its true fullness. And we're going to talk about that
Yeah.
particularly in one of the action steps that we talk about here. Let's start with the conviction. The more that we understand what real leisure is, true leisure, the more we're going to be able to do good work,
Yeah.
because good work is going to have an element of leisure in it. They're not absolutely separate. Work serves leisure, but not only does it serve it as it were from afar, it can have rich elements of leisure in it. And this is why I say big, huge point. Formation for life in the home, not just for the young, because we're always forming ourselves too. What we are doing in the home is preparing ourselves, practicing, trying to become more fully human. And to get the leisure thing straight is done in part through good work. And at the same time, wonderful virtuous circularity there makes us more capable of truly good work by having it always shot through with that deeper element. Really quick example. See if you have any question, and we'll say our five. I'm going to say this from a completely Christian viewpoint. We talk about how we can sanctify everything we do by doing it for the love of God, doing it for the glory of God. This actually is an aspect of what's being captured here. When you bring into work this kind of for itself thing, I'm thinking of God to the extent that I can, even if I just more do it every now and then and try to do it habitually, have it always be present. I'm present to Him. I'm loving Him in and through what I'm doing right now. That is bringing a key element of leisure, of the for itself, of the
Hmm.
ultimate thing. What is life about? It's about resting in loving, knowing, loving God.
Hmm.
When we are consciously saying, and then even kind of unconsciously bearing it with us, I'm doing this for the love of God, that brings right into work something from outside of it, but now that animates it, that gives its life. This is all about how I know and love and serve God. Just give us
Hmm.
a little example. Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of makes me chuckle and make you realize, wow, it's so great to have repeated conversations over and over again, because I've heard you say real work has elements of leisure in it. And I realized that I never quite understood what you meant there. And all of a sudden it was like an aha moment going that leisure is resting in and seeing the good of what it means to be human. And when we see that and we let that inform the work we do, leisure is somehow present in work. And so now I understand what you mean when you say there's an aspect of leisure in good work.
Well,
So,
and let's keep thinking about it, because there'll be more beautiful, I think, aspects and examples that will come out as we go through concrete examples.
do you mind if I just say one more thing
Of
before we
course.
dive into the practical? I promise I'll keep it really short because we really want to get into the practical here. But it also struck me when we were talking about the relationship of work and leisure. Leisure is not work, but it's not anti-work. And so I think when we make the distinction that we say work can have aspects of leisure, but leisure is leisure. Leisure is not work. It makes it sound like leisure is anti-work. And leisure is not anti-work. It just is an activity for its own sake in its own. And
So
as such, it can beyond and as such it can be part of how we work, but it doesn't in any way negate it. And as a matter of fact, I love the point that you made. In fact, it affirms and elevates the work that we do when that which we experience, come to recognize, and exercise in leisure becomes seamlessly part of the work that we do. It's only then that work really is unlocked to have the richness that is kind of in potency there when you combine the two. So I like that, because I feel like maybe that's part of the error of my concept of leisure, is that it's the anti-work moment. It's the anti-work moment. It's not. It's actually seamlessly connected, because it informs and elevates and
Perfect.
enriches, draws out the most rich qualities of work.
Very glad you asked to say that. And so as we move on, let's bear this in mind. It's work itself will be enriched, enlivened, animated. We might say, let's take as our example, the monk who turns away in some sense leaves behind, there's a little bit of a mystery here, leaves behind the choir stall where he's chanting to go and work in the field. His life is an exercise in integration, and ours should too.
Mm-hmm.
It will look different, but in the home, there should be an integration. There's a different, slightly different balance, a different order of the day, but that fundamental aspect of integration of the leisure aspects of what we do in the home are what will inform and transform all the work that we do.
Hmm.
Everything that's not directly leisure will be made much greater, much richer by bringing in what we practice directly in our leisure times.
Hmm.
That's why to say what these 5 action steps are, they're going to be primarily, it's going to be a mixture, but it's going to be, some of them will be directly, you just kind of stop everything else and you do these kind of leisure activities. And by doing that, we're cultivating something deep in our soul that will spill over, that we will take with us into the other things. Some of the actions we're going to talk about are, you might say, the lower ends of doing leisure directly itself. It's more at the crossover point, but it's still by emphasizing the leisure aspect of it. Again, we're cultivating that deep part of our soul that's going to make all the rest of our day in some way have this element.
Hmm.
Because we started with leisure is what life is about. And so what life is about should, in some sense, be animating everything we do in life.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why it's the heart of the home.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the 5 points. I really loved that at the end of your chapter on leisure, you distilled the principles into 5 action steps or 5 possible ways that in the household we can cultivate and practice and enact leisure in the home. So
All right,
can
so
we
let's
just
do it.
follow
We're
these
holding in
points
our
in the
hands
book?
the book right now.
Yep.
Why don't we have this memorized here? All right, so chapter 4 is called Leisure, the rest that gives meaning to the rest, meaning the rest, that's the leisure, that means gives meaning to the rest, meaning to everything
Everything
else,
else.
right?
Yeah.
The principle, enact real leisure as the center of life in the home. A quotation from Aristotle, but leisure of itself gives pleasure and happiness and enjoyment of life, which are experienced not by the busy man, but by those who have leisure. In other words, it's experienced most directly and most fully in otium, not in the negotium.
Hmm.
Hey, Aristotle himself would very much see again, it is going to spill over. All right, so then I'm on page 90, action steps. All right, so then the first is raise the bar in amusement. All right, now last, always the big question people bring up because it is so key today. Quick reminder, what's the difference between leisure and amusement? The big problem today is what Aristotle calls amusement is what most people think of when we say leisure. The thing that leisure and amusement have in common is they are not work. But there's 2 kinds of thing that are not work. There's amusement, which is, in a sense, it's leisure light. It is not working. It's a cousin of leisure, but it's the dwarf cousin. It's the much less rich and real one. It has its place. We're not trying to spank it, say it's bad. It's diversion. It's, I just need to loosen the bowstring. I
Hmm.
just need to relax. I just need a little rest. I just need
It's stop.
to sled down the hill. I just
Yeah.
need to go on the roller coaster. It's more of a stopping.
Yeah. Stop working.
And so it doesn't
Yeah.
have that whole positive aspect of a doing something rich. The main thing that Aristotle says to distinguish them is leisure is much more serious. And when we hear the word serious,
Yeah.
that's, we can terrify people. Well,
Can't we just have fun?
and of course, but this is like serious fun. This is like serious richness. This is what really rests the soul. This is why people are so anxious. They're always working. And then the only, as it were, quote, rest they get from working is amusement, which is more this shallow distraction, which doesn't really renew the soul.
Mm.
And so it's very hard to go back to work. The deeper rest, which is precisely deeper because it's what gives meaning. It's a reminder, hey, let's stop working to remind ourselves of why we work anyway. That's what leisure is. Do you see how amusement is? This is not reminding ourselves why we're working, or it's very sad if, like, to go on the roller coaster is why we work. This is an empty life, right? Work is not for the sake of amusement. Aristotle actually says you actually amuse yourself so that you can go back to work and do your work better.
Hmm.
It never, that's the big difference. You'd never say about leisure, you go to leisure so that you can go and do work better, although it does actually make you capable of doing work better. All right, so
Okay, wait. Before you
amusement
go
is this
on,
more shallow thing.
can I just pause
raise
1
the bar in
second? Sorry, we do want to raise the bar, but just that you use the word serious, and serious is a great word, but I think, again, in our common parlance, serious makes you feel like somber, the darkened Sunday parlor with horsehair covered seats that are slippery that as children you have to sit on all Sunday and not do anything, smile, laugh, or joke. Type of serious. I understand what you're trying to say when you say serious. I think you mean
Right.
it's richer.
Important. Right.
Or it's richer. It's more nuanced.
Deep.
It has more tooth to it, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh,
And so
it doesn't bite you.
the reason I just don't like using the word serious, while it is true, it is serious. And I guess it's great to be encouraged to try to be a little bit richer in the language that we use. Serious is not antithetical to joy or happiness or lightheartedness or enjoyment. But I just want to say that because when I hear the word serious in relation to leisure, I feel like running the other direction.
I hear
right?
you.
Because
Right.
I just feel like sometimes we need to just go and that is a desire for amusement, but it's also a desire for leisure that I just need to be refreshed. It is a desire for leisure and it does yield joy and it does yield happiness. So I just want to say, I don't think what you mean by when you say serious, you don't mean somber.
No.
Right?
That's great. And dear, thank you. You're absolutely right. So on this number one, we say raise the bar in amusement. We're not saying, right. So people don't run away screaming, say, make your amusement serious. Then it's not amusement anymore. No. All right. So great. Let's say what we mean. Amusement has its place. So the two parts I say of raising the bar in amusement is, first of all, we have a big problem today of a lot of amusements, by the way, also often takes the form of what is called entertainment, right? Which the first step is cull out the crass, the low, the inappropriate, the banal,
Vulgar. Yeah.
because look, a lot of our amusement takes the form of entertainment that's served up to us, movies, games that very often produced by culture in which we live have the features of the culture in which we live, which tends to be vulgar, tends to have a very low humor, if not just low, often
Inappropriate.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, just to be alert to there's no place for that. Not because it's not serious, but because it's not fitting to human dignity. So to first of all look at our amusement and recognize that let's remember our human dignity. It's going to make it be richer fun. It's going to make it be better. This is a challenge. We need to work on this because people might think, well, I want to picture the gentleman. How's the gentleman able to have fun? The gentleman and the lady can have fun, real fun, not banal, inappropriate fun, not the crass joke, not the watching shows that constantly have to go to kind of sexual innuendo in order to engage people's interest, or just be expressions of the lowest common denominator, those cultural expressions in music, in speech that are trying to appeal to us kind of, I don't know how to say that, kind of precisely through their being crass. Because sometimes crass can be very funny. And so that we say to ourselves, hey, we're gonna cut that out. I think is a first step. How are we doing?
Yeah, I think it strikes me when you were saying that part of the challenge with amusement is there is something, or I should say, not amusement, entertainment, is there's a passive element to entertainment, which is partially what we're looking for when we go to entertainment. Just feed me something. I just want to be entertained. There's a passive element there. And so we often, in order to be able to stay passive, we just take what's given to us. And I think that's why sometimes we settle for entertainment that is crass or vulgar or not really our own standards, because it's what's out there. I just want to watch a movie and that's the movie that's given to me. Well, I don't really like that it has that part in it, but I mean, I just want to be entertained. And so I think it's realizing that while entertainment is legitimate, a legitimate part of amusement, that we do have to exercise judgment in what things we go to in order to be entertained. And I think we sometimes don't realize that we have choices in that regard. And sometimes those choices mean, yeah, not that one. Yeah, not that one. And I think that's what you're kind of encouraging us to do when you say raise the bar, is be aware that while we're going into something that we're looking for a passive experience, that there's a certain kind of passivity that is inappropriate.
Or in any case, one that makes us be not discerning.
Yes.
Discerning. Excellent. So then kind of the A and the B, so there's kind of two sides. Well, first just got a little bit more of a negative, kind of say no to the lower. And now
be aware.
Now there's kind of the positive of more positively raise the bar in the sense of choose amusements that, this is the phrase I always use, that you can see, you can experience, you can feel that they're higher because they actually more easily shade into, transition into, are imbued with elements of
Mhm.
leisure. And so we make the distinction between amusement, this kind of lower, kind of simple diversion, versus the richer, resting in higher, richer things.
Mm.
The thing is, there's things that walk along the line, which is great. In
Mm.
other words, the example I often give is the family game. There can be just the completely corny family game that isn't really having any deeper elements, but there can be the family game that then shades into something deeper, precisely where maybe it allows people to generously feel the presence of the other. Something beautiful about the other comes out. We're able to recognize that, see that. We enter into that, rejoice to that together. Anytime that there's this element of kind of, we said earlier, of kind of bringing the love of God into everything, an element of recognizing the deeper beauty and resting in it, that's an element of leisure. And there's
Mhm.
no contradiction in saying that can be going on, as we just said, in work, particularly good work. That's one of the ways another topic, how we can recognize what the good work is, that it is kind of shading into leisure. We pointed to that a little bit when we talked about the
Mhm.
monk. Our amusement can have a little bit of a richer aspect where, well, isn't it not amusement anymore? Well, it's on the edge.
Mhm.
We've seen this happen. Sometimes you have the students over and you're reading something really funny that's just kind of banal, diverting, but then all of a sudden, moment of deeper insight. Oh, we're kind of all there together,
Mhm.
experiencing something. So to try to find those ways of being together as a family, among your friends, the young people, where it's a richer form of amusement, such as, you know, maybe that particular kind of family game that allows itself to kind of cross over. Just
Mhm.
look for those richer amusements that, where if you're wondering, well, gosh, is this amusement or is it leisure? Don't sweat it. If
Yeah,
you have to ask that question,
it's a good thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. So actually love that description of amusement that shades into leisure. And it struck me that maybe a litmus test for us about kind of looking at our amusement and saying, is this a higher form of amusement, a richer form of amusement? Does it provide the opportunity for us to have an experience of the goodness of being together? So I'm thinking of something completely like a dumb game. When you said a dumb family game, there was this game that one of our kids brought home of you put this device in your mouth and then you have to try to say, you have to kind of give clues to your team. And of course, you totally can't pronounce it because you've got this completely deforming piece of plastic in your mouth. It is so hysterically funny. Just the experience of everybody laughing together at somebody making an endeavor that was just humorous. The game in itself is completely banal and dumb. It doesn't have meaning in itself, but it provided an opportunity for everyone to laugh together and rejoice together in something, which makes me think I think that the spirit in which you play games is maybe more important than the game itself. I'm just thinking, for example,
Yeah.
a water balloon toss on the lawn on the 4th of July can either become a horrible experience because people are being competitive and, well, our team won, or I can't believe you dropped that, or, oh my gosh, that completely soaked you. Whoa, I'm so sorry about that. Terrible. I did not do that on purpose. Laughing, joke, joke, joke. So there's a way that we can approach games that, frankly, if we have that approach, it actually makes it possible for a family to play a game together where there is unequal ability. So a water balloon toss with the family on the lawn. You've
Great
got a
point.
6-year-old tossing with, a 16-year-old, and the 16-year-old is completely absorbing the fact that the 6-year-old can't catch the ball because it's about being together. It's not about.
This is huge.
So when you said shading into leisure, it made me think you can tell that something completely banal and in itself completely diverting can shade into leisure when it becomes an affirmation and an opportunity for people to experience the goodness of life together.
Amen. And you know what? I just had a huge revelation in your saying that, or in the sense of revelation, the sense of appreciating more deeply something that I've been blessed to been thinking about for some time. In brief, the virtuous. To be virtuous is to be happy. I've always, when talking about friendship, talk about how the more virtuous you are, the more capable you are of having true friendship. This might be challenging. It is challenging. It's also very beautiful. The more virtuous you are, the more you're capable of leisure, the more you're capable of good amusement, the more you're capable of good work. And so,
Mm.
what does this point up? The importance of the involvement of the elders, of parents, of doing these things together and patterning how you do
Mhm.
amusement, how you do these games. If you have an interior disposition that is oriented towards the higher things, towards loving God, towards enacting our love of God, towards living according to his law, towards being generous and virtuous. This makes it much easier to bring in natural, those elements of leisure will keep showing up. Even the way, like in a game, rather than letting the competition take first place, we let take first place being together and affirming one another. Oh my goodness, you're doing
Yes,
such a great
that's
job.
the most
This is a
important.
matter of character,
Yeah.
a sense of gratitude, a sense of praise. Anytime you got gratitude and praise going on, you have an element of leisure coming in there.
Mhm.
So it's really striking me to have this attitude of leisure. Again, leisure is what life is about. Properly understood, leisure is what life is about. Growing in character is itself going to empower us to see and enact more. What is life about? About being together in rich ways, living in integrity with a kind of contemplative appreciation of these things. So all that was a way of saying, the reason to try to grow in character will be capable of much more capable of raising the bar in amusement when,
Mhm.
for instance, we play our even banal or competitive games, but it allows it to very easily shade into that deeper contact.
Yeah. And I love how you said leisure is seeing. It seems to me in an amusement where that kind of virtuous approach is taken, that it allows us to see others and to have the experience of being seen. And so while it might be a completely banal activity, when we enter into it with that kind of fundamentally virtuous stance, we are enacting, we are getting refreshed because we experience ourselves as being seen. But super importantly, especially from the perspective of adults being involved with younger children, we are creating a moment or experience where those who are younger are experiencing themselves being seen.
Amen.
And so
Amen.
now they know what to look for when we start talking about something like leisure. It's about being seen. They have an experience of being seen and therefore being able to see others.
I think that's striking. Takeaway example then, how about, I'm going to give one right here. Play a game, whatever it is, where there is competition in it, but particularly as parents or as whomever is doing this, grandparents, and uncle, mentor, friend, focus intentionally on it doesn't matter who wins. What matters is that we experience ourselves as together in joy right now and as supporting one another. There's nothing wrong with competition. That's one of those fun. If you do it right, it's fun to have the competitive aspect as long as it is kept in its place. I love it when you can tell someone both really would like to win, but is more totally about we're doing this together. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, well struck. Good job. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that person that's just ready to, it makes things so rich, not as a project, but but do it naturally. That's my example.
Yeah.
What do you have any quick example number one before we go to number two? Because we need to roll.
I like that example. And I'll just say that it's not antithetical to winning. We don't say winning's not important. What we're saying is winning is not the most important. So I think that it allows you to have that balance. You don't have to pretend that winning's not important, but we just have to remember it's not the most important.
Amen. We're going to have more. Another example I would have given here has to do with the kind of stories that we might tell. But that's actually one of the ones coming up. So we'll save it for then. Number two is appreciate beauty in work, art, and nature. Appreciate beauty in work, art, and nature.
Mhm.
This is page 90 in the book. Also, the bottom line here is beauty. Beauty is something that pleases when seen. Anytime you're really contemplating, in some sense, you're contemplating something beautiful. You're being moved by what you're seeing. So to appreciate, to rest in beauty is essential to the human identity.
Mhm.
So when we think of beauty, we shouldn't just think of art, people, reality, God. But shows up in different ways. So here, just to be clear on what this means is very concrete things to why this trio, the
The trio of, say the trio
of
again.
work, art, beauty was
Mhm.
appreciate beauty. Pardon me, in work, art, and nature. So just to be clear on why it's all about beauty. It's going to show up sometimes in our work to have a sense of beauty when we're making things, when we're doing the work of setting the table, when we're doing the work of cleaning up the home, when we're doing it, literally any work, when I'm doing the work preparing for class, there'd be a certain beauty of order in how I make a lecture. To be attentive to beauty in any work that we do is to bring an aspect of leisure into it. Be attentive to beauty in art. That's where very concretely, we need to cultivate a sense for beauty through the amazing gift of the great art that is part of our inheritance. So
Hmm.
we've had podcasts about music, how important that is in the home. This include here, the visual arts, the plastic arts, the performed arts, literature,
Hmm.
a very important so an act of cultivating leisure in the home, appreciate beauty in our work, in various forms of arts, and those to have a sense for that in the home. This is very concrete, and we'll give a couple more specific examples. And then in nature, and of course, that's the old look at the stars at night, go for a walk in the woods or on a country lane, going for a hike. When done with a real sense of, we want to see beauty, especially together, but it doesn't have to be together. It could be alone. It's an very important act of leisure to go for an early morning hike by oneself, listening to the birds sing. These are ways of enacting, of cultivating, of doing leisure. When we are intentional about beauty is central in our life. Beauty goes hand in hand with leisure. And so we have appreciate that beauty in our work, in arts, and in nature.
For me, the two things that I think of on a practical level where I love incorporating beauty in what we do, one is making our home beautiful in small ways so that with kind of awareness or intention that this will be a place that my family can come in and rest, be enveloped, that it's a little place in which their heart can be opened or blossomed. So I love it's almost a little bit like leaving little messages throughout the home
I
to
love
make
that.
things beautiful. It's like leaving a little note that, can awaken something or make someone feel special or seen or safe. And so for me, pursuing beauty in the home in small ways is that's kind of my shading over into
Well,
leisure.
I absolutely love that. How about this for all anyone who works to make home just to keep it clean and well ordered, but particularly if doing so with a sense of if just in little ways we can have the beauty of order here. This is cultivating a sense, an ability for leisure by we never just become purely utilitarian. There's a time, of course, I was about to say. So, you sometimes you use the cloth napkins rather than the paper
Hmm.
napkins. There's a place for the kind of the utility of, okay, I got to do paper plates. Okay, fine. But at least at times, as possible, here's at least a reason when we can. We're going to use the china and not the plastic.
Hmm.
We're going to use a cloth napkin and not
Hmm.
the paper napkin. We're going to put up that beautiful painting. We're going to arrange the room in a certain kind of way, any way we can. This is such a beautiful part of homemaking. Showing beauty always matters. I know it sounds trite, but it is an expression of our root conviction that life is about leisure,
Hmm.
because leisure is seeing, resting in the beloved, resting in the truth and goodness together, resting in what is beautiful. So I think so. Your what example do you have? I'll give mine, and just very very concretely. Already said a couple of them. Looking through great books and going to the museum to try to appreciate art. But my big one here is going for a walk
Yeah,
slash
that's very
laying down at
you.
night and looking at the
Yeah.
stars. But doing so, remember, with an attitude of, I am going to try to be cultivating my sense of beauty. And if we say these things out loud in front of those around us, children, friends, in grandchildren, whoever it is that's in kind of in our home with us, look at that such and such. Isn't such and such beautiful? Ah, don't you appreciate that? What do you see right now that really moves you? This is giving a sense and a taste for what life is really about. What
Hmm.
example do you have?
I realized I think my favorite way of enacting beauty together in a leisurely way is reading. I just love doing it through beautiful words. I love when we read good literature out loud or copy out a poem and put it where everyone can read it, or just a couple of, scripture is so amazing, but there's something extraordinary that happens when you just take out one verse and it stands alone on the refrigerator. It just sometimes just the incredible beauty of scripture just stands out at you. And so I just love having an encounter of the beauty of words.
We only have a few minutes, but we have 3, 4, and 5.
All right, let's go.
We're gonna be fine here. 3, because we've already kind of been speaking about these things, but
Mhm.
we're gonna give you lots of practical stuff here in our remaining time here. Number three is make together time. This is what I like to call, I have two different ways I refer to it, times of plenitude
Mm.
or porch time. The the together time here is this treasure that by and large we have lost. That's why we have to have an intentional household. We have to live as if people matter. And living as if people matter means living as if leisure matters.
Mhm.
And again, these times shade into one another. You think of in that working household where I've been doing some research on the importance of front porches and the history of front porches, especially in America. But some really beautiful things. It's a place where they would be in the South. This one person was reporting it was pretty much universal that like around 4 or 5 o'clock on any hot summer afternoon, a family would be together shelling beans on their front porch in preparation for dinner. But, you know, when you're done shelling the beans, or even in between shelling beans while you're shelling the beans, there's this can become this leisurely aspect. They're just able to talk. This is where certain kinds of work lend themselves also to, quote, shading into leisure. There's a distinction between work and leisure, but the more integrated life, it has ways, times, contexts where they really interpenetrate in beautiful ways. So
Mhm.
that porch, where it can be a place of good work, it also was kind of people put down what they're working on, pause in what they're working on, start to have a drink, and they're just being together, sharing what happened today. This is not done for practical purposes. This is not work. This is resting pleasantly in the presence of one another, kind of
Mhm.
Wendell Berry line. So porch time, I like to say, you got to find the porch in your life, in your home, especially. We could replace that term porch with hearth. We could also call this hearth time. Maybe that's a little bit more of a, say, European, if they don't so much have porches. Apparently they don't. Where's that place where we come together, where it's maybe work or other things are done there too, but there's that key element of just, it ends up being great context just to be together.
Mhm. It struck me while you were saying that one thing to be aware of, I think, for those of us who are pursuing an intentional household and an intentional life, so much of everything that we do acquires a kind of rich quality to it. And yet we need to be careful. Just because it's rich work doesn't mean it's not something that needs to be set aside for the sake of that personal time. Let's face it, we live in a world where there is just a lot to do, and it's tempting to say there isn't enough time in the day. We, as intentional householders, need to set aside the good work that we're doing in order to have porch time. And I think that's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I think it's a challenge for you.
Ah,
Um, Sorry,
you just said
full
that.
disclosure, but
That's not quite
I
full,
think
but
it's easier to say work is a tyrant when the work that we do is empty, banal, oppressive, not enjoyable. But when the work that we do is rich, it's for the sake of our family, it's imbued with all kinds of good things. Even that kind of work needs to be stopped for porch time.
just to be clear, everybody, that was a direct statement to her husband who has a problem because he has been intentional about doing richer work. It is blessed to be a teacher where then a lot of the work that I do to prepare for teaching or lectures, whatever, has a certain richness and can be then harder to convince yourself to set aside.
Mhm.
So,
Because it's good in itself.
duly noted,
Mhm.
point well taken. And I honestly think, dear, these things here are kind of the practical keys.
Mm.
There's a minute to the intentional household. Really, this chapter 4, this principle about leisure, really kind of it connects. It's not the whole show, but it connects to everything else. So, what would an example be? Here's a very concrete, maybe straightforward one. We're already at the dinner table to make a point of staying. Hey, dads, this is going to be a tough one. Or maybe it's, hey, moms, this is going to be a tough one. But if we stay and out of good manners, we ask our children to stay too, or until they've asked to be excused. And sometimes when someone asks to be excused because he wants to run off and do something, might say, actually, thank you for asking to be excused. Not quite yet. I'd like to be with you and see your face and hear a little more about your day before you go. So my very concrete suggestion is linger after dinner. And that it might not be the porch or the hearth. It might be the closest that we come in our homes,
Mm.
and can be a real moment of we just want to be together. Because again, I say this is a direct taste of what we are made for. When heaven is referred to as a heavenly banquet, it's not so much going to the image is not so much you're eating something, it's you're enjoying one another's company in this face to face presence around a table. The point in this case of the table is it puts you at the perfect distance and arrangement for face to face presence. What a
Hmm.
gift the table is in being both at the same time a place you eat and what puts you in the bodily presence at the right distance on a human scale with the right number of people where you can speak and hear one another, don't have to shout over people, and really be together in love. There's my example. What's yours, dear?
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with that example.
No, you got to come up with your own. Don't steal mine.
Well, I
Come on.
think it's the perfect segue actually to the next point, which is make story time,
All
because
right.
around the dinner table, like on the front porch, is the perfect environment for a story to come out. So
Okay.
so yes, I'm stealing yours, but mostly I'm just affirming and going in
That's fine.
deeper. And yeah,
All right.
point
So,
number 4.
Yep. Say it.
Make story time. So an opportunity to be able to actually unfold that thing, which is what life is about. So it is this incredibly rich place of leisure where leisure is seeing and resting in the most important thing of life. Storytelling is a way of putting words to it and drawing us in deeper.
I love that. I love that way of putting it. So, number 4 is make story time. And I think two versions of that. Telling real stories, so important. We parents can so not notice. Our children want to hear about our life. They want to hear about our successes, our failures, our the funny things that have happened, those crazy things that have happened, and stories hopefully then that we've heard from our parents or grandparents.
Mhm.
And if we don't have those to pass on in the case, let's give our children something to pass on about us when we're not, sitting around this table anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's, of course, those stories of art, meaning those crafted by, the great the Belloc short story that we love to
Hmm.
read out loud, or O. Henry,
Hmm.
or, a little Shakespeare, whatever it is. These stories help us understand our own story. This is not utilitarian. This is going for the heart of
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. Yeah. So, you pointed out reading stories, and I think that's really important. But I think we need to all practice becoming storytellers, because there's something extraordinary about someone you love and respect as becoming the filter and the conduit through which a story comes. My dad pointed out that when all these superhero movies were coming out, his observation was, we have superhero movies because we don't have stories of saints anymore. And everybody
Mhm.
really, really needs to have someone to look up to inspire them. So, whether we're telling saint stories, like telling our children, recounting some extraordinary life of a person who really sought to live in the one true good thing, and it
Mhm.
had this consequence in their life, is really a great way of drawing not just children, but for ourselves to recount these great deeds is super important. Or, it might not be a saint, but heroic men and women.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah, that,
really
that, that is
a
it really
beautiful
is.
way of inviting and enacting leisure.
Giving us someone to imitate, I think, is
Yeah.
excellent point to emphasize there. That just kind of that adds another beautiful bloom. We have to wrap up, but our fifth, the good news is we're all ready for it. Make and take rest on the Lord's day.
Yeah.
Reason we got those two verbs here is just on the make, particularly today. This is the being intentional. We're going to have to make it happen. We're going
Mhm.
to have to arrange the Lord's Day. And so just a quick principle. We've talked about this before with another podcast on Sundays and how it should be the center of the week. St. Thomas Aquinas says Sunday is your practicing for being in heaven. It
I
connects.
love
So
that.
this is the unfolding of life is about leisure. Sunday is practicing. It's focusing on what life is most about. That's why it is centered on worship. Worship is the height of leisure. It's plugging in and being present to in a loving way, opening our heart in praise to the Lord. So that's always the center of life. That's the height of leisure. That is what gives form to the rest of Sunday. And then as possible, all the things we've just said, all the other four are things then that we looked to find the time. May there be those crazy games. Might be only on Sunday that we really
Mhm.
have the time to
Yeah.
do that. So, that richer amusement that can shade well
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
leisure, Sunday's a great time
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
It's storytelling, the walk in nature, all of these
Yeah.
things, all in view
Porch
of
time.
actually being especially then under the rubric of we're preparing for heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
One of my favorite ways to enter into that, I just also confess it's actually very hard for me, and I have to work really hard to be okay with that rest. I mean, it's so interesting how, wow, it's really hard to undo the other 6 days of the week. So I guess that's why it's good to practice leisure in some form or fashion throughout the week, even if it's in a smaller way, so that when Sunday comes, it's not this big struggle with yourself to rest in the Lord. But a very practical thing, I just love hearing the Sunday readings, how they give an opportunity for a conversation, even if it's just on the way home in the car, to talk about some beautiful aspect of, wow, isn't it amazing how, or I wonder why, or what does that mean? When that happens on a family level, it's really, I just love it. It's a great way of resting in the Lord Sunday.
Take yours and say, that is my suggestion. Take the readings of the day and have that be our kind of center of centering ourselves on the Lord, and then go out from there in all these other ways.
I think that's a great plan.
Well, so much more we could have said here and done, but we don't want to keep people, and great to have the conversation with you, dear. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in this episode of The Intentional Household. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. If you have any topic requests, please send them to lifecraftgroup@gmail.com. For our Wednesday reflections, free courses, reading groups, and live events, please visit life-craft.org.